Hey there, folks. This is Chris McLean, Peak Performance and Transformation Coach, back with yet another episode of the Peak Performance and Predictable Growth Show, the peak performance show for creative agency founders, owners, and leaders, where we explore the agency journey from the unique perspective of those at the coalface of the industry. And my guests help unlock and dissect strategies, tools, and tactics that are working right now to help you deliver better results for your clients and grow and scale your agency to 6 and 7 figures and beyond. And today I welcome in the studio Jason from Greenwood Consulting. And Greenwood Consulting helps both ambitious startups and established businesses to prepare themselves for digital commerce and supports them as they seize the opportunity to reimagine themselves from the ground up for the digital age. Jason, thanks so much for jumping on and joining me. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. It's really it's my pleasure to be here. That's for sure. And I guess just in line with some of the agency work that you do, I'm also director of solutions of a digital commerce agency as well, Mustache Republic, with offices in Auckland and Sydney. So I guess I come at this from both sides. I come at it from a pure consultancy side as well as I guess an agency understanding side. So hopefully that'll be valuable for your audience.
Yeah, for sure. So take us through, how did both of those things sort of come about? How did you get into this space? What was interesting about this for you to start up sort of both sides of the agency and the consulting business, and particularly sort of around Ecomm?
Yeah, so I guess I've been in the e-com space for over 20 years now, and so I've always, from a digital perspective, I've always worked specifically in the e-com space. I haven't sort of done anything else. That's been my pure focus for over 20 years. On my own e-commerce pure play for quite a number of years, and then went into agency land, and also have worked for some of the largest retailers in ANZ. My most recent e-commerce management role was for New Zealand's largest online retailer of natural health products. So I guess I've got that deep and broad background within e-com, and that's been my focus for the entirety of my career. And so once I left HealthPost, I wanted to get back into the agency space. I love the breadth, love the depth of the agency space, love the opportunity to work across a lot of different exciting projects, businesses working in a lot of different verticals, and just the variety that the agency space brings. And so I went and became the director of solutions at Mustache Republic. Mustache Republic is founded by Tony Ho, and he's one of my best mates. And so we always we actually met through a previous agency role at Exceed, and we always knew that we would work together somehow, some way, at some point, and that opportunity presented itself. And so I came on board as director of solutions, but I also, after about a year of doing that, which is great. And look, I love solutioning. I'm a senior solution architect, and look, I love that side of things. But what I guess COVID has brought to light is the fact that there are, a lot of businesses, they're not even ready yet for. They're not ready to come to an agency yet. They really don't know what they don't know. And really through COVID, I guess the demand for digital capability, the demand for digital skills, and businesses to be able to build up a strong digital practice just went through the roof. And so I saw an opportunity really to jump into the market as an independent consultant, to be able to come in, don't do any delivery in terms of, I'm not a developer, don't do any actual technical delivery of implementations, but I come in really and help businesses get ready to level up their digital game and their e-commerce game, and really look at holistically across their entire business. So we look at brand, we look at people, we look at process, we look at tech, and we look at what they're trying to achieve and what they're doing today, and we help determine a roadmap to help them bridge that gap. And so really that is pre-agency, in the sense that, once a business engages with an agency, typically that starts with a discovery, and that's where you gather requirements around a new project, etc. But unless a business knows what it needs, it's hard to communicate that to an agency. And so that's where I come in. I come in and I help businesses set themselves up for success with agencies, whether that be with Mustache or any other agency that they choose to engage with. And I can help out with the RFX process, etc. So that's really how I see my position in the market, having been in the business for so long, working across the whole of ANZ for many years. I understand the unique, I guess, the needs of this market, and I really enjoy working with businesses down here. That's how I got into it.
Yeah, wow, fascinating. So you've seen, obviously, exactly like you said, COVID was a wake-up call for a lot of brick and mortar business, and businesses that sort of hadn't gone through that digital transformation piece yet, which sounds kind of crazy that businesses sort of hadn't been digital focusing. Are you heavily is the type of business you work with a traditional commerce business? Are they traders? Are they mum and pop stores? Are they brick and mortar shops? Are they people just selling product? What's the general kind of avatar? What kind of business are you recognizing that needs to take that step where it's not a maybe anymore? It's not a nice to have. This is how you need to do business now. What's that profile of business look like?
Yeah, well, look, I think that all businesses now need to start looking at whether they had an e-commerce offering in the past or whether they didn't. I think all businesses have to look at it now. They don't really have a choice. They've kind of got the COVID gun to their head. But for me personally, I really do my best work in businesses that are either a very well-funded startup that's usually an offshoot of an established business, or businesses doing around maybe 3 to 5 million kind of minimum online already. Those are the businesses that I can really help the most. I don't really work with SMBs. I really don't focus on that space just because they just to be frank, they typically can't afford me, and they don't have the resources to pull big enough levers that I would come in and I would help them be able to level up their business, but they have to have the resources to be able to do that, and they have to be able to afford to make those changes in their business. So, there's a lot of, I guess, consultants and smaller agencies, 1-person, 2-person band agencies that work with that fairly and squarely in that SMB space. But I work with mid-enterprises and larger as a rule. And that's really where I can do my best work. That's where I can affect the biggest amount of change and pull big levers for those businesses to help them move up to the next level and the next level and the next level, where they can go from, if they're doing 5 million a year online now, I can help them build systems and processes that allow them to double, triple, quadruple that over the next 12, 24, 36 months without having to scale their human resources in proportion with their revenue growth. And so really it's about also bringing omni-channel capability to their business. Oftentimes businesses may have either been bricks and mortar only, online only, and they're looking to bring a hybrid model to their business. They're looking to go full omni, and they're looking to integrate, even if they're existing omni-channel businesses, meaning they may have 1 or 2 stores. They may have an online e-commerce presence, but for example, they're not fully integrated. So they're multi-channel, meaning they've got multiple selling channels, but they're not fully integrated. So for example, their loyalty may not be integrated across online, offline. Their store credits may not be integrated between online, offline. Their pricing may not be integrated online, offline. Their digital experience in terms of, if you walk into their store and you create an account in their store, does it automatically create an account in their online store and then tell you that they've done that? And vice versa. Do they have all of that data synced between systems? Are they running a PIM platform? Are they running a CDP yet? Do they have a CRM? So really it's about, do they have omni-channel customer service systems and processes in place? Can I buy online, return in store? Can I buy in store, return online? Do I have that absolutely harmonious omni-channel experience across all touch points? And for many businesses, even if they are a multi-channel business, they are not truly omni-channel. They call themselves omni-channel, but once you get under the bonnet and you go through the customer experience yourself through their business, you realize they're not truly omni-channel, and they have lots and lots of broken experiences along that buyer journey. So that's really where I can come in, and I can make sure that they're doing all those things properly.
Yeah, super interesting. You're getting right into the tech stack and the back end platforms of the business, and they said sort of linking all those things up that you would somewhat assume a business at that sort of size has put together. But you sort of piecing those things together and making sure that all the gaps are filled and that everything connects, and that seamless user journey from I don't know you to I've now made a purchase to now I'm part of your ecosystem is fully optimized and fully functional even. So in terms of, you sort of talk about big levers that you can sort of pull on? You sort of mentioned some of them there. What are some of the key ones? What are the big ones that businesses like this tend to overlook, or just don't recognize as little or big tweaks they can make that have sort of significant outcome for them?
Yeah, look, there's the traditional componentry that I guess many businesses have had for a long time. There's the e-commerce front end, there's the ERP back end, there's maybe an order / inventory / warehouse management system that has to be thought about. Maybe they've got a POS system that has to be thought about. And I help them really review those systems and make sure they're fit for purpose in a truly, omni-channel world. And I only work with SaaS platforms. I do not work with on-premise technology. I used to work with on-premise technology, and SaaS is where the world is headed. And so I help businesses really cloudify their business and move to SaaS across their entire technology stack. But going beyond, I guess, those foundational basics, do they have that front end? Do they have the back end? Are they operationally sound? Can they actually deliver on the promises that they're making to their customers? And then once you go beyond that, as of 2021, we now have two massive pieces of technology that a lot of businesses don't yet have that are going to be mission critical for them moving forward. And we're talking, again, medium-sized enterprises and larger probably are when they start to get to a place where these types of technology, they can actually afford them, they can implement them properly, and they can derive a huge amount of benefit out of those technologies for them and their customers. And that is PIM, Product Information Management, and CDP. And I'll talk about PIM first, because in order to create that seamless customer experience, you have to present your products in a way that the customer can understand. So that means having all of the product attributes, having all of the product descriptions, having size information if you're a fashion business, having all of the imagery, the rich video, all of the interactive elements of a product to be able to present that effectively in digital spaces. You have to have that information. And typically that is siloed somewhat in an ERP and a front-end e-commerce platform, and there's nothing that sits in the middle for a lot of businesses. And that's where a PIM, or Product Information Management platform, becomes so beneficial. So typically, in the ERP, you'll have the foundational product data. You might have the name, you might have the SKU, you'll have the price, and you'll have the inventory level, and typically not a lot else. And then in the e-commerce platform or in the marketplaces, you need a whole lot more information. You need human-friendly product descriptions. You need human-friendly product attributes that matter to the customer about those products. You need human-friendly images and video and all sorts of other interactive collateral around a product that allows the customer to make an effective buying decision as they go through that journey. And really, modern e-commerce platforms aren't really designed to be the PIM in their own right. And we have the challenge of slicing and dicing our product data in unique ways depending on the channel. So obviously, if I'm going into a marketplace, every marketplace has its own view of those products that it wants to have. It has its own product category hierarchy. It has its own product attributes list and the way that it manages those attributes. It has different listing information and the way that that information needs to be put through. So for example, some marketplaces require you to have the brand as part of the name when you push it in, for example. There's all sorts of different requirements that every marketplace has when you list on their platform. And so you need to be able to slice and dice your product data as the target platform requires. So if I'm an ANZ merchant and I'm listing on Catch, I'm listing on Amazon, I'm listing on eBay, I'm listing on Trade Me, and I'm listing on Catch, they all, and the market, for example, they will all have their own product data structures that they require when you give them a feed of products. And then they have their own way of getting the orders back out of their system for fulfillment, and then pushing fulfillment information back into their system, right? So most businesses are not ready for that. They think they are, but when you dig under the bonnet, adopting new channels for those businesses is very complex, it's very costly, and it's very time consuming for them because they don't have systems that are designed to be flexible enough to push digital data out to multiple channels simultaneously, or syndicate data to multiple channels simultaneously. And that's where PIM comes in, because it allows you to create different views of the same product information in different formats and push it out to the digital channels in the appropriate format for those channels. And it becomes a central repository. And good PIM platforms have version control, so you can roll back and roll forward between versions of the data. They have publishing workflows, so if you've got multiple people in your business that need to enrich data before it goes out to those channels, that can be handled by user control and all sorts of other fancy, I guess, capabilities that really are very important in an omni-channel world where you're not just selling through an owned website anymore. You're selling through pause, you might be selling through a pop-up, you might be selling through, 15 different marketplaces, and then of course social, because social marketplaces also have their own data formats and their own data requirements, and then you have to be able to get the orders back into your system for fulfillment. So that's the PIM piece. Does that kind of make sense? The whole PIM discussion, that rationale, does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. I sort of hadn't considered that massive ecosystem that you tend to hear. Someone's an eBay trader, or they're an Amazon shop, or they have their own retail business. But you're saying having that omni view and connecting all of these different platforms and deploying your singular product out through all those different platforms. Yeah. Well, as you're saying, it's a much more complicated piece than sort of I'd recognize, but obviously a lot of businesses that are trading in this ecosystem don't recognize how convoluted it can be, and how having that piece that sits in the middle that can handle and manage all of the intricacies and different bits of data that need to be spit out everywhere. So it makes a lot of sense.
Fantastic, great. Well, the next, I guess, major system that I'm seeing a lot of, I guess, demand for and a newfound appreciation for is what's called CDP, or customer data platforms. And you may have heard of Segment, you may have heard of Lexer, you may have heard of a few, popular customer data platforms down in this part of the world, but they are finally starting to really come into their own and come into the limelight because of the fact that the death of third-party cookies is coming. And so historically, you had two major components of a marketing stack for a business. You had their CRM, which was kind of the font of all knowledge and a single view of the customer around all customer interaction. And then you had a marketing automation platform like your Klaviyo's, your Marcy's, your .digitals, which was doing all the email communication and oftentimes doing all the segmentation. And so typically those marketing automation platforms will receive your catalog data, your transactional data, and obviously your subscriber and customer data as well into those platforms, so that they can do some, basic RFM segmentation and other forms of segmentation that then allow to drive marketing automation and email automation through those platforms. However, with the death of third-party cookies, what that means is that a lot of the marketing and the MarTech stack and the ad tech stack, which is driven really and owned by third-party cookies today, there is no good replacement for third-party cookies yet. That's all being worked on by a lot of people that are very much smarter than me. However, what is happening is that even if third-party cookies were still viable into the future, the cost of acquisition through the major walled garden owners, i.e. the Googles of the world, the Facebooks of the world, the Apples of the world, the cost of customer acquisition has grown so fast that now it is just simply unaffordable at scale for many, many businesses. Even businesses that are pretty large, the reality is, unless they have massive margins, they don't have the budget to continue to acquire new customers through those digital channels at the scale that they used to. And so therefore, there's a renewed focus, and it's just been exacerbated by the death of third-party cookies. There is a renewed focus on what's called Z, or zero-party data, customer data, and first-party customer data. And I'll explain to you just very briefly what those two types of data are. So if I come to your website and I explicitly give you information, if you ask me if I'm on a clothing site, for example, or a fashion site, and you give me your size information, so this is non-inferred data. This is explicit data. So if I tell you what my favorite color is, I tell you how many kids I have, I tell you when my birthday is, I tell you all this rich information. Or let's say I'm on a health site and I tell you what my health concerns are, and that I've got diabetes, and I've got hypertension, and I've got all these things, right? Anything I volunteer to you when you ask me to provide that profile information, that's known as Z, or zero-party data. Then we have first-party data, and that is inferred and behavioral data. So if you come up to my fashion site and you buy a size 8, 95% of the time from my website, I can reasonably infer that you wear a size 8. Or if you buy a red product 80% of the time, then it's a pretty good bet that you like the color red, even though you haven't explicitly told me so. You've told me through your behavior that you like the color red. And then there is other first-party data, i.e., what is your actual purchase history? What is the average basket size that you purchased through me? So basically, all of the behavioral data, the products that you add to your wish list on my site, the products you add to compare on my website, the products you add to your cart, the products you check out with, the categories that you visit, the upsells and cross sells that you click on, all that behavioral data that I get off of my website and through the transactions that you do through my business, that's all known as first party data. Now that when you combine zero party data and first party data, those are massively beneficial chunks of data in terms of crafting the customer journey for you and the customer experience for you and tailoring it for you. And then also secondarily tailoring the marketing messages that I send to you to make sure they're relevant for you based on what we know about you. And so as businesses are moving away from a hyper dependence on acquisition because of the cost and complexity of acquisition and how that's going to grow moving forward with the death of third-party cookies, businesses are reallocating huge parts of their marketing budget away from acquisition to retention and customer lifetime value instead. And therefore, zero and first-party data become even more important in that environment where you have a retention and lifetime value focus versus an acquisition focus, right? And so that's where a CDP comes in, because a CDP plugs the gaps between your marketing automation platform and your CRM. So CRM is more of an operational platform, so it tracks things like help desk queries and maybe contacts and phone calls and cases and all that sort of stuff. And even if you don't have a CRM, you'll typically have something like a Zendesk or a Gorgeous that's managing those customer service interactions. And so there's a massive gap in most businesses' technology stack that sits right smack in the middle of a marketing automation platform and a CRM, and that's where a CDP comes in. It captures all that data across all channels, and it supplements it with other third-party data sets, i.e., other demographic data sets and other address data sets, et cetera, other social media data, et cetera. It augments that internal data set with third-party data sets and validates it. And then it also helps to cleanse your data sets where, for example, let's say I have the same human being, but they've got 3 accounts in my system because they created one account at home from their home email address, one account from their family email address, and one account from their work email address, for example. And so I think they're 3 different people. And so therefore their conversion rate and all their stats are based on us assuming they're 3 different people, when in actual fact, they're the same human being that has 3 different accounts with me. A CDP starts to connect those dots together and make sure you have one single cleansed view of your customer. The segmentation all happens then in your CDP, and it gets pushed out. Those segments get pushed out to your marketing automation platform purely for the operational sending of those messages and the interaction with the customer. So that's why I think PIM and CDP, absolutely foundational pieces of the commerce technology stack. And really, I'm just seeing an explosion in both demand and understanding of those 2 pieces, in addition to all the other pieces of the stack that have traditionally been there.
Yeah, interesting stuff. So what kind of timeline, you sort of talk about the death of third-party cookies, is there a supposed or hypothetical timeline of when does that stop? When do e-com brands need to be ready for the demise of that data capability?
Look, it's already starting to happen. You look at Safari and you look at Firefox and you look at Apple's iOS ecosystem, and they've already killed off third-party cookies. Google is already in the process of scaling back what third-party cookies can do. They've set a termination. They've set about 3 or 4 termination dates. Google has both in Chrome as well as across their entire ecosystem. They've pushed it out. I think the most recent update of that is early 2022. I think maybe February or March of 2022. I think is the drop dead date now from Google. So we'll see if they stick to that. But they're certainly making massive moves in that direction already, and some of the other walled gardens already have. And you have to remember that the death of third-party cookies actually, in my opinion, has absolutely nothing to do with privacy and has nothing to do with helping the consumer. It has to do with Google trying to entrench its power over the internet because it has access to unlimited first or virtually unlimited first-party data. So it no longer needs third-party data to drive the internet, and it wants you to have to come to them as the holder of so much first-party data. So Google, Apple, Facebook hold massive amounts of first-party data, and the reason why they hold that data is because their systems are used to authenticate into many other systems. So you know that what people think is an altruistic free service that Google provides. Log in with Google, log in with Facebook. Everybody thinks, oh, that's great. You know, they're providing us this single authentication service across all these platforms for free. Well, no, it's not free. They are capturing first-party data as a result, and that's locking that data inside their walled garden, which you now have to turn around as a marketer and pay them for. So really, the death of third-party cookies, in my opinion, has, you know, they will say it's about privacy and protecting, you know, the customer experience across the internet, but it actually has nothing to do with that. It has to do with entrenching the walled garden power that exists on the internet today and making you pay for access to your own data effectively. So really, that's coming. It's a given that it's coming, and so really businesses have to start thinking about what is the value of my data and my customers' data to me. What does that look like? How can I repurpose that data to benefit my customers and give them a better experience? You know, through things like you know, persistent profile, persistent you know, preference data. For example, if you're a fashion brand and someone tells you, well, I'm a size 8 and I prefer red, well, those preferences should persist throughout the customer journey on the front end if that's activated and that's turned on by the customer. And most websites today just don't allow you to do that. They don't allow you to leverage your own preference data to improve your customer experience with that business. And that's really where we're headed as an industry and as an ecosystem. I think that's where the world is headed.
Yeah, well, super interesting. And with these platforms, are these now natively ML and AI? Are they natively machine learning AI platforms, or is that something that's coming in to assist with that, you know, pattern recognition and connection of that data within these platforms?
Certainly with CDP, yes, because in order to analyze, I guess, the volume of data that a CDP needs to analyze to generate the segmentation, the dynamic segmentation that they're capable of doing, they have to have an element of algorithmic machine learning and AI. Not so much with PIM, because PIM is more, it's more to deal with structured and unstructured data as it relates to products. So other systems that would suck in that catalog data, i.e. the CDP, because CDP needs to know about your catalog to be able to make the connections between the customer data and the product data. But PIM itself is usually a little bit dumb. There is some business rules and business logic that can be added to them, i.e. you could say, okay, if for all of my boots, I want to that have the product type of boot or have product name boot in them, we want to dynamically assign them to my boots category. You can set up business rules and logic, but that's all about specific business rules that are appropriate for that business, as opposed to anything that is just sort of automatically figured out via AI or algorithms, right? It's just simply business logic as opposed to any kind of smarts behind that. The smarts reside with the humans, knowing, okay, these are the rules I want to implement that are suitable for my business and their customers. But definitely from a CDP platform perspective, they all have huge components of machine learning and AI.
Mm-hmm. Which makes sense, right? When you're dealing with millions of data points, it's way more efficient to have a machine learning algorithm run over the top of that and sort it all out rather than trying to go through a spreadsheet yourself. So
yeah, well, also you have to
remember
that
type of data.
You're totally right, and a CDP not only fetches catalog data, customer data in terms of what they've bought, what they've liked, what they've their transactional history with you, as well as other website usage information. They not only capture that, but they also capture data, or they realistically should be configured to capture data from CRM and from customer service platforms as well. So let's say hypothetically you have one customer, let's say you have two customers. customers, and all other things being equal. So in other words, they have the same customer lifetime value, meaning they spend the same amount with you. They buy just as frequently from you. They buy the same quantity of items from you. Let's say all of the things being equal, you've got two different people, but one customer contacts customer service either through live chat or phone or email 3 times on average per purchase, and the other customer contacts you 0 times or 0.1 times or 0.5 times per average purchase, right? Well, which customer is more valuable to you? The one that contacts you less or requires less volumes of service to complete a transaction, right? So you want to be able to bring that operational data into your CDP and qualify those segments based on not only their revenue and their margin to you as a business, but also their costs to you as a business. And the same goes for returns. So let's say, again, all of the things being equal, on average, one person returns 1 out of 5 items, and the other person returns 1 out of 20 items on average, right? Well, the cost to your business for the person that returns 1 out of 5 is much higher versus the person that returns 1 out of 20, right? Or 1 out of 50. So the reality is the CDP needs to have access to all of your operational systems as well as your transactional and your catalog systems to be able to do this type of dynamic segmentation based on, revenue, margin, cost, all those facets of interacting with a customer. You need to know all of that data so that you can ultimately understand the profitability down to a customer level and ultimately the customer lifetime value of that individual customer once all costs are taken into account.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, the future of commerce and online is certainly super data heavy, and it's a whole new way to think about. I mean, customer lifetime value used to be a pretty simple thing to kind of work out, and as you're saying, once you bring in all these other new dynamic components, it gets a bit more complicated, but it also gets much more profitable. And from the customer perspective, you're really getting into that super hyper personalized customer experience where everything I do is as if it's exactly perfect for me, which it is because it's based on my data. But that rich data set, if executed and deployed properly, I imagine creates a pretty amazing customer experience.
It absolutely does. I think the one danger that businesses will have to watch out for as they implement hyper-personalization, because there's other hyper-personalization front-end systems as well that have a lot of algorithmic machine learning associated with them. But I think one of the things that businesses have to be cautious about is both surprise and delight, because customers still want to be surprised and delighted, and they want have stuff surfaced to them that they didn't expect, right? They still expect an element of that throughout their shopper journey, or at least certain segments of customers will, and you have to identify those customers, and you have to make sure that they still have that surprise and delight element. And you have the scenario of people buying for other people. So you have let's say it's for example, I know most blokes that I know hate shopping for clothes, for example. And so oftentimes their partners, I know in my case, my partner, does probably 80% of my clothes shopping for me. And she's just frankly better at it and she enjoys it much more than I do. And so one of the dangers we run into is in scenarios like that, where one family member is buying for other family members or friends or buying for gifts or things like that. If we over hyper personalize, then getting to products that are suitable for those people that they're buying for becomes harder. So we're actually creating more friction than less in those environments. And that's why being able to turn personalization off, or at least being able to exert an element of control over hyper personalization through telling you explicitly, okay, I'm shopping for myself, I'm shopping for others, as well as bringing in surprise and delight through the customer journey, or at least retaining that element of surprise and delight, becomes ever more important as we get into big data and as we get into hyper personalization. So those are the two areas that I always caution businesses to not go overboard on. That yes, we want to hyper personalize wherever we can, especially based on Zed and first party data, but we don't want to remove the joy of finding something unexpected through you and doing that product discovery element, because there's through our biology, there's a whole lot of search and find. There's a whole lot of dopamine that comes along with searching and finding, right? And so we don't want to remove that dopamine hit of searching and finding. But then there's also the element of shoppability for people you care about. And so those are the only two things I caution businesses to think about in terms of the dangers of over personalization.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Yeah, you don't want to knock out that exploration drive. And you say biologically, that's yeah. massive hits of dopamine and norepinephrine and all that good stuff that we get when we seek, as you said, seek and find and explore and get that little reward of delight. So yeah, and that brings in a whole other aspect, right, of the human biology that's actually being triggered by this stuff. So a whole other conversation maybe for another day. But Jason, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate all of that information. There was a lot in there and a lot of new stuff for me, and hopefully a lot of new stuff for people that are running these types of e-com stores. If people want to find you, they want to get in touch with you, where's the best place for them to reach out and jump on a call or find out more about what you do?
Look, you can always find my details at greenwoodconsulting.net. But realistically, from a content perspective, I'm the most active on LinkedIn. I put, I post every single day to LinkedIn, and so you can really find out, I guess, more about my thinking. And I, I have my own podcast, which is at the Coalface Podcast, so they can look that up as well. But even when I post, when I have a new episode, I always release that to LinkedIn just to let everybody know I've got a new episode out. So LinkedIn's probably the easiest for most people. If they're on LinkedIn, they can direct message me there, or just follow my content. I've got Learn with Jason is my hashtag on LinkedIn, so they can follow that hashtag as well, and they can always be alerted to new content when I put it out. So that's probably the easiest for most people. But I'm also on Facebook and of course my website as well. So either way, basically, and I'm also on Instagram and a few other places. But really, most of my content I put out to LinkedIn first.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Thanks for dropping by. It was a super high level, high value conversation. Thanks for bringing all that knowledge to us here on the show. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you for hosting. And I look forward to pumping this one out and making sure that it's distributed widely once this one's published.
Awesome. Look forward to that as well. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value from Jason here today. I know I did. There's a whole lot of stuff that I know about now that I didn't know 30 odd minutes ago. So Jason, thanks. Really appreciate you swinging by. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Cheers, Chris.